Welcome back to Streaming Media Connect 2025. I'm Steve Nathans Kelly, editor of Streaming Media and chair of Streaming Media Connect. It's good to be back for our last session of the day, which is Fast Break, Packaging and Selling Sports on Fast. Before we get started, I'm just going to go through a couple of housekeeping notes here. The first person to correctly identify the track and the artist that you were hearing as we came in will win a $50 gift card from Amazon at the end of the session, but you must be present to win. The chat is open, so please chat in the chat. But if you have questions for the panel, put those in the Q&A so they don't scroll away if there's a lot of chat going on. And our moderator, Mike Nagle, will get through as many questions as he can at the end of the panel. We'll be back live and in person in Santa Monica, California, October 6th to 8th for Stream Media 2025. There'll be a link to the chat in the chat there. Registration is open and the program is up online. If you're interested in speaking at Stream Media 2025, there's also a call for speakers that's open. The program is fairly well set, but there's lots of speaking slots set left. So if you, whatever your area of expertise is, if you see something looks like a good spot for you, let us know what your expertise is, and we'll try to find a place for you in the program. Without further ado, I would like to welcome Mike Nagle from Ashling Digital. Here you are, Mike.
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, good to see you. Take it away.
Well, hopefully when the streaming media conference moves to sunny Southern California, you get better weather than we have here on the East Coast today.
Yeah, that's that's the idea, going to California for sure.
But the silver lining in the dark clouds today is we have an amazing esteemed panel today. Everybody's talking about sports and streaming, and we have the good fortune to have quite a lineup of experts, true experts here to help us. Starting with going in alpha order, Tom Buffalano from Tata Communications. Tom, thank you for joining us today. Also from Fubo, Pamela Duckworth. Pamela, thank you for joining us. Rob Muzak, HRM International, producer and founder of Lacrosse Legends. Christy Tanner from Swerve Sports. And though she's having some technical difficulties, we may potentially be joined by Kathy Rasenberger of Rasenberger Media and also from Sports Studios. We're going to figure out how to be entertaining and informative without Kathy in our presence for the time being. Let's start off with a quick question that I think everybody's talking about. You know, I see a lot of conferences focusing on these same subjects, but I think we're in a unique position here because we've got a really well-rounded group. So streaming has opened the door for lesser or perhaps maybe harder to find sports is a better way to put it, not the least of which is women's sports. Also lacrosse, pickleball, world chase tag, more sports like that. Tom, I'm going to start with you on this one. How is the influx of sports on streaming, how does that change the game for Tata and for you?
So we, Tata global company, we've got a ton of global customers. So for example, we work with F1, Formula E, you know, a lot of the major football in US soccer leagues across the country, across the world. And then particularly in the US, I work with universities and their athletic departments for college sports production. So basically what it gives us the option to do, on one hand, we may provide a lot of infrastructure for broadcast, traditional broadcast and, you know, and production services. What we also have the ability to do is provide other solutions, mostly cloud-based solutions that enable our customers to manage their content in a much more efficient way, so that ultimately when they want to go out to other points of distribution, whether it's a YouTube channel or social media, sort of after the live event is over, we can provide that for them as well. So once our customers get on board from a broadcast perspective, then we can help them monetize assets that they create above and beyond what they're doing for live.
Christy, I'm going to segue to you because I think it's Swerve, as an advisor to so many people who don't have a legacy in the broadcast or cable or even streaming business. How do you work with all of these newbies, if you will, in the streaming world to help educate them on how to present and most importantly, to monetize their content?
Yeah, great question. We work with a broad range of levels of knowledge and aptitude and experience on the streaming front. And I would say some of the leagues and teams and associations that we work with in Swerve Sports, which encompasses everything from co-ed sports, like combat sports, MMA, boxing, etc., to strictly women's sports such as soccer and basketball, volleyball, and the rest, to ascendant sports like competitive trampolining and cheer. I think ascendant is the new buzzword in that range. But I think we have partners that are already pretty advanced in streaming on YouTube, but that may not be their best monetization opportunity. So FAST is a really good way, if you're already on YouTube, to create additional monetization opportunities and marketing opportunities for your sport. And I guess if I was to sum it up for anybody entering the FAST space in sports for the first time, the way to think about it is in some ways as marketing for your sport or your league or even your team that also earns you revenue. It really is kind of a dual benefit.
Yeah, my wife and I, once the cheerleading competition comes on, we are glued to the set. I swear that's hard to get my attention away from that.
Well, I actually thought you were going to say you and your wife are competitive cheerleaders. So
I was thinking the same.
I went from a high to a kind of like, oh, okay.
My human pyramid ain't what it used to be.
That's what I was picturing.
Pamela, how all of these new sports impacting, new to you sports or new to me sports impacting business at Fubo?
Well, we get pitched, and Christy, I'm sure you do too, pitched daily with these, new sports that have come out of the woodwork. One of my favorites is and I think I mentioned it to you the other day, the slapping each other in a
Slap fighting. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. I did not go for that one, Christy. I don't know if you did.
We don't actually feature slap fighting.
Okay, I'm not quite sure who does, but it is interesting. We have been lucky enough to work with a bunch of people, and early on, bare knuckle fight championship came to us, and we tested them on overnights because some people in the company thought it might be a little bit too violent, but I'm like, let's just test it and see. And it ended up getting a great following, and it kind of lives in the top 10 of all of our programming on Fubo Sports. Every single month, it's ranking up there in the top 10. And it was doing so well that we, Fubo, at the company, we decided to make an investment. So we're minority owners. So to Christy's point earlier, the goal was to get eyeballs. So using Fubo Sports, because we're on almost every single platform out there, and we're on OTA, we can reach about between 155 and 175 million eyeballs, potential eyeballs. Now, we all know that you're not going to do that, but increasing the brand by using the internal marketing and just getting the brand out there has lifted these guys, and now they're a game changer. But yeah, some of these sports that come by, and I'm sure Christy, you have a ton of stories as well. They're quite interesting and inventive.
Well, I think that's one of the benefits, Pamela. This is a great point about let's call it the emerging video strategies in sports, is that their old rules are thrown out.
Mhm.
What we are seeing among not only Gen Z viewers, but among streaming viewers in general, and I would say this has been true for at least the last 10 years that I've had a significant access to first-party data about what people watch, is that the new viewing habits are not the old viewing habits. And so some of the conventional wisdom that comes from broadcast and cable sports programming does not apply to the streaming space. Things that people think are popular are not as popular as they think. And we've recently did some research on Gen Z media habits, and we found that the top 3 sports for Gen Z are football and basketball, okay, but combat sports, number 3. So that is surprising to a lot of media and even sports executives who are not engaged in combat sports themselves, or who are of a certain age where they just, it's not on their radar, or they're even, like, I think certain geographies I find are surprised by the enthusiasm for combat sports.
Yeah.
And so, like, in many cases, media executives, I think, bring their own bubbles to their expectations for the space that can be limiting to creativity, experimentation, and testing and seeing what works. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I want to make sure that we're probably getting people at all ends of the spectrum of streaming. Some people may be entering the category for the very first time. So if you're not as don't have a legacy in the category, let's start with what is fast. So for our audience's benefit, a fast channel, if you're a Samsung television in your living room, or an LG screen, or a Roku screen, fast is free ad-supported television. It's content that's available not as part of a subscription. You can get it, a lot of people refer to it as OTT, over the top, meaning, it's coming in via the internet. Most people connect their smart TVs to their internet connection in their home, either through a hard wire or via Wi-Fi. And you can get any number of free platforms that bring you hundreds of fast channels. And those fast channels can be thematic, they can be sports, they can be episodic content from legacy television days. So that's some of what we're talking about here. And I want to make sure that we're not speaking over anyone's heads, or going too inside on our lingo. So if you're in the chat, in the audience today, and there's something missing, I always say the 3 bravest words in the English language are, I don't know. So feel free to ask the question in the chat and we'll get to it. Rob, I want to come back to you. We're talking about lesser known sports. So you've been producing Lacrosse Legends. I believe you're in season 5 or season 6 now.
That's right. Right. Season 5, right?
You're broadcasting USA Today Sports. We carried Lacrosse Legends, full disclosure, for our audience and our panel. You don't broadcast the games as much as you're talking about players past, present, and future. Tell me, what does streaming offer to Lacrosse Legends, and how does that help or move the needle for you as a content producer?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. Streaming helps a lot, because to get a show like Lacrosse Legends on, let's say, an NBC or a CBS or an ABC, would be an uphill climb, to say the least. So by putting it on like a USA Today, it gives the show a lot more credibility. Let me put it to you that way, as opposed to just saying, yeah, we're just on YouTube, and now we're also on the fast TV. People, their eyebrows go up, so it helps quite a bit.
I think also one of the things we talked about in our rehearsal last week, we were talking about relatability, and where I think streaming opens up the door for not simply showing competition. Not all sports have their Michael Jordan or their Caitlin Clark or their Gretzky or Aaron Judge. I'm a Yankee fan, so it's all about Aaron Judge for me. How does that relatability bring an audience in that might otherwise find another place or another place, another way to find out about the sport or about the players in it, Rob?
Well, what I do is we focus more on human interest stories, if you will. There are two types. There are two sorts of program. The shorts that we do is more for the younger audience, where they show clips from modern day games. But the older audience, guys like me in their 20s and 30s, they want to know what happened back in the 80s and the 90s. So you relate human interest with what the current events that was happening back then, and then we just sprinkle, oh yeah, lacrosse is on top of it all, but you make the story about them, and that's what's relatable. That's what people like. You know, you mentioned one time about the James Ford story when he came down with a box from his attic with all his lacrosse stuff, and you open it, it was like Pandora's box. He had won so many championships, so many accolades, you would never have known it, but everyone could relate to that because we've all done that. I've got boxes right here. But that's how I went about it. A lot of people don't know what lacrosse is, you believe it or not. In the Northeast, they do, but otherwise, it's like if you walk through the Bronx or Harlem, they look at you like you were crazy. I've had people say, "Are you cleaning out a pool? Are you fishing?" No, this is. But streaming does help a lot, though. I have to give it that.
Pamela, I want to come back to you. We were talking the other week about marketing and some of what you shared about Fubo's efforts to bring in audiences and maybe introduce audiences to new sports, new content. Share with the audience a little bit about what you're doing to draw in viewership and how that impacts the content that you carry on Fubo.
Right. So I guess the joy of having like a mothership, you know, the Fubo streaming service and us being a part of it is that we can utilize all of these subs that we have access to that, you know, just use Fubo as a cable replacement, you know, and get all your channels on there just like everything else for less. And what we can do is we can email, we can text, we can run promos on other channels. For instance, we can run a promo on ESPN promoting bare knuckle fight championship on Fubo Sports. So we're lucky enough to have a kind of an ecosystem here that we can cross promote, like any events. Like we did and Christy, you'll like this one because you're in combat sports, a lot of combat sports. We did a Mother's Day special, and it was Tough Mother, right? And it was all women fighting, because I'm sure you know this, but that gets almost the highest ratings of everything that we air is women in MMA. And it's kind of amazing. Like to your point earlier, it's not something that you would know, you know, just right off the bat, unless like you did looked at the data, but like our numbers show that the audience wants this, and we're going to serve it up to them. But yeah, so we just market on, we use social a lot. We put out, you know, what's the schedule tonight? What are you going to be able to watch? We kind of use old school tactics as well, you know, like since people have such a hard time discovering what to watch, you read all of those reports, like someone spent 20 minutes looking for something to watch, and then they were 15 minutes into it, right? Like, and like, you're like, we're hurting the actual customer experience. So we're just trying to help people find things easier. Discoverability is a very huge problem in our world. So just being able to use this whole, what's someone saying? I do transmission for bare knuckle. Jake Sam does. Did you see that, Michael?
Yeah,
yeah, so we love our partners at bare knuckle, but all of them. We just started this one with this guy reached out to us from Philadelphia. Well, no, from actually Long Island, and he works for the electric company. And I'm not making this up. He called us from the back of one of those big electric trucks. You know, he was actually on his lunch break, and he pitched his new thing called Warrior Cup. It's Muay Thai, and he does it all. He's a one-man band, and he does such a great job. And I loved his entrepreneurial spirit that we, you know, we said, we're going to try this. I want to help you succeed, because I love the fact that he's like spending his lunch hour pitching his MMA, and it's doing extremely well. We're doing it live. I think once a month, I think we do a program with him. So yeah, I don't know. We get interesting calls, and I love trying to help these guys succeed.
Props to the folks at Roku and the early streamers out of the gate, who a lot of these channels were one-person, two-person operations that really started streaming. Independent filmmakers. the old, all it takes is a dollar and a dream. You know, we're changing the technology, but I love what you just articulated, Pamela. A lot of what it comes down to is good old-fashioned marketing, good old-fashioned boots on the ground marketing to drive viewership. Christy, I want to bring this one over to you next, especially because you're working with a lot of independents. How important is it and how difficult is it for them to bring their audience from where they are to the streaming platforms to drive viewership?
Really good question. I'd say the most important thing for them to bring an audience to their streaming channel is having strong social engagement. And I say that for a couple reasons. One, we have this research study that we just did earlier this year on Gen Z media habits. And what that found, and this isn't surprising, but the data really backed it up, is that Gen Z discovers almost all of their media on social. And we asked from about 20 different types of media. How do you discover audio podcasts on social? How do you discover video podcasts on social? How do you discover new streaming channels on social? How do you discover new sports, or how do you find sports athletes to follow or new teams, or et cetera, et cetera? It all starts on social, and with YouTube being number one and Instagram being number two in the sports category, TikTok maybe a third there. So what we have found is that when we have competitions featuring athletes or teams that have a strong social engagement, there we will see a lift in the stream. That is not to say that it works incredibly well. I mean, this is sort of the best that we have right now, but that is where we will see a lift. And then vice versa, what some of the sports that we work with have seen is a lift on their in-person events from the stream. So there is, I think, a need for, let's call it, I don't know, 360 degrees of marketing, breaking through all the noise in people's lives, that you kind of have to be everywhere all the time if you want to gain attention. And there's an expectation that you will be there too. So that's our anecdotally and data-driven experience. And then the last thing I would say has nothing to do with sort of sports, but as many people know, I did run TV Guide Digital for many years. And I can say with 100% certainty that nobody knows what time or where anything is on ever, and they never have. And so we have multi-generation learned helplessness on that front. We just made it so easy for people to turn on a TV and find something to watch that they've never retained anything. So this isn't about digital or phones breaking people's brains. They've always been broken on the in the realm of what to watch. This predating streaming, this was the number one most talked about thing in video and TV is, how do I find something? So you know, someone should do a deep sociological study on that. And I also think it's very specifically American too, because we have so much choice. We have such an abundance of great things to watch.
All right, I'm lowering my standards. I'm going to assume we're not going to solve that today since it's been around for a while.
You know, look, I mean, we need, I do think it's shortchanging the consumer. I think it's so much worse now than it was when I first started in this space for the consumer, so much worse for the consumer. We kind of, I mean, abuse is a strong term, but we aren't kind to our audience.
True, I agree 100%.
Hey, Tom, I want to bring this over to you because you working with so many different international platforms and partners. Streaming is in its streaming and faster rolling out in different paces in different places.
Right.
And not to mention social media that push and pull driving viewership.
Right.
How's it impacting Tata's business and the partners that you work with? What are you seeing in that space as fast as becoming more prevalent overseas?
Yeah, actually, that's a good point. Fast is more, I don't know, prevalent, I guess you'd say, with media properties internationally than it is in the US. And I think what we see is that the strategy is, I think as Christy was talking about, 360 degrees strategy. So you don't necessarily see somebody look at fast as an afterthought. You see it as part of a programming launch, if you will. So as these media companies, content owners go out to the market, they're looking at this as a part of a bigger media strategy than just, oh, we're going to use fast as sort of a leftovers for stuff that isn't part of our broadcast strategy. And how that dovetails into using social media as a way to drive more eyeballs in general, and finding different audiences. You're programming fast in a way that maybe you're trying to reach an audience that isn't necessarily your core audience. Maybe you're looking for, as Robert was saying, human interest stories that are going to draw people into a live sports broadcast, on a major network. And fast is a way to sort of, I guess, test the waters, if you will, on what types of programming will draw in different eyeballs or new audience, or even more so target a niche part of your audience. So if you're doing Formula One, for example, and you want to focus on one driver, and you program a fast channel that really just focuses on that one driver, like Lewis Hamilton, for example, how does that impact your overall business? So there's a lot of different, from what I've seen, a lot of different ways that you use fast to draw in new eyeballs, to test the waters on different programming, and as a bigger part of your overall media strategy, as opposed to just a you know a single piece of it.
Well, we've reached the halfway mark on our discussion here, and we're the last panel of the day. I don't think we're going to be the first panel to discuss the S word, standardization. We talked a little bit in our prep call last week about data integrity, data and measurement consistency, the availability of it and the value of it, and what needs to happen in this business. Hopefully everybody's watching, everybody's listening. Hopefully everybody will take action when we say it. Rob, I'll start this part of the discussion with the producer. Here on social, you get to see how many people watch, how soon, how long,
Right.
which platform. How important is it for you as you gain a bigger stake in the streaming business to get specific numbers, viewership numbers back, so that you can monetize the programming that you create through sponsorships and advertising?
Oh, it's very important what you just said. Getting the people to come, it's a loaded question. Getting the people to come on is tough. They come on, they tell their story. People listen to the story. They like this. They like what they're hearing. It's like they want to hear it. They want to hear more of it. They want to hear another. They want to hear another story, and still the lacrosse part comes actually by the third or fourth program. They're like, you know what? Let me give this sport a try. It's not what I thought. So I would have to say it's quite important what you just said there.
Yeah, I think, driving eyeballs, knowing how many eyeballs came in, what the potential audience is. I think one of the challenges we face in the business is many of the fast platforms, you don't have to register to watch. And if you don't register, the measurement there can be a little bit more inconsistent, maybe anonymized a little bit more, as opposed to, Fubo. You're working with a company that you know, your numbers are a little bit more buttoned up. So you're probably, and I think also, Pamela, you come from the old world of cable, where you've got some measurement. Go ahead,
But
Bob, you want to get something else?
yeah, just to tell you the other thing about the analytics. Yeah, you're right. It's not as in depth as I would like it to be, but little things like clicks of likes and shares helps a lot. We were talking about the Ivy League before. We're talking as I put Cornell clips on, you see like they're gonna get more likes here. Put more Cornell stuff on. Maybe it's another team like Manhattan, Mercer College doesn't get that many views. Okay, lay off of those a little bit. But now that the playoffs are in, you listen to your analytics. You watch what they like, watch what they share, and you move on that. So Cornell's the hot spot right now as far as lacrosse goes.
Pamela, you mentioned the you know, the bare knuckle boxing and how you piloted that overnight. How did the analytics change where it got placed, how much you played it?
Well, the joy of being able, of programming all your own O&O channels is you can test it in every single block that you want. And then you create. So what we did was we found when it was doing the best, right? Obviously prime time, we all know that. But we picked a night of the week based off of when we tested it. We tested it Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Our live stuff obviously is on the weekends, but we're using the library. We found out that Monday nights, yes, we know there's Monday Night Football, but there's not that much more sports there. So we created a Monday night bare knuckle fight championship night. And it gets the highest number of viewers, the highest streams, uniques, and the longest amount of time watching. It averages about 23 minutes before they switch and come back. And that's like that's a good stream time. So we're lucky enough here at Fubo also to have a really, really strong BA department, business analytics, that we meet weekly, and we get our numbers, we can get them daily. We can get them, we do a weekly report where we see what's doing well and change up the schedule. But I think, Christy, you would know this as well. Getting the numbers from our partner platforms takes a lot longer. And if they give them to us, so we base a lot of our stuff just off of our platform here on Fubo streaming.
Right.
But it seems
Can I
like
ask
we get great data.
May I ask you a question, Pam? When you see that's happening, are you inclined not to have another boxing show come on or create more
Oh
boxing?
no, I love it. I want choice for the viewers. Yeah, bring it on. I'm currently I'm trying to make a deal with this group that pitched me that, and I can't say who, because I'm scared I'm going to hex it, but they ended up, it was like one of the best pitches I've gotten in gosh, I don't know, like a year and a half. And we ended up like laughing on the call and like starting to get like talking creatively about what we could do with the program. And it was such a refreshing moment, because it's going to be like how it started out with bare knuckle, like how we're partners and we can build this thing together and create that audience and help grow that brand as well. So
Hey, and Tom, what's your thoughts on the data and standardization and measurement?
So having come from a cable background as well, I agree that you need standardization across the board in order to be able to sell. My vision is that at some point you're going to be including your fast channels in upfronts, right? So in the way that, we would do when I was at MTV Networks, it'd be like, oh, our rating's a 0.4, but let's sell it as a 0.8. I mean, the way that I think in the short term you might be able to sort of figure out a better way to get analytics through opt-in is you've got to give your viewership something of value in order to make them opt in, right? So what is that, and then how do you collect demographic information from your audience in a way that is valuable, so that you know who's viewing, and then you turn that into a feedback loop, so that as you're programming, I mean, Pamela, you test a lot of programming, but as you're programming, you get a feedback loop that's pretty instantaneous so that your viewership becomes part of the programming strategy, right? You're getting that back from them. And then what that does is the engagement, which again, if you get them to opt in, they can give you feedback on programming strategy. The engagement gives you ultimately what ends up being a higher CPM. And then, that theoretically turns into your ability to sell in, or create more revenue generating opportunities for advertisers.
Christy, what are your thoughts?
Well, I really appreciate the trust that you have in me, Mike, to answer a question about data in the final third of a panel on the very last panel of the day. So I'm going to take that as a huge badge of honor and try to make this interesting. What I would say is that anyone who's been in this free streaming space for even a few months probably already has Stockholm syndrome. We don't have high enough expectations of the data and analytics we rightly deserve for the value that we are creating for platforms. So I think that's number one. We need to get out of the mindset that we don't deserve better analytics. That's number one. Number two, what I would say is, I think this is holding back the free streaming space in a major way. It is creating a lack of trust with sponsors and advertisers. It is leading to an environment where it's just too difficult to program well. If you don't have information, you really are, you could say, flying blind in some respects. We do everything we can to massage the data that we have at Swerve. And it's a pretty significant lift, and it requires a level of creativity and analytical savvy. All of that could be a lot easier. We could be constantly improving our program more quickly and, serving the customers and the consumers and the viewers so much better. Considering that many of these platforms are using these customers' data to sell them more ads, I really do think that, and this sounds like oddly self-righteous and weird and maybe even political, but it isn't. If someone's paying money to buy a TV that's fast enabled, or allowing or watching ads that are continue to create the surveillance ad supported world that we live in, I just think they deserve better programming, and better is a judgment call, but I just think that we could provide people with more of what they want and need and deserve. And that it's not true only in sports. Look, this is true in every category, entertainment and news as well. We just really underserving people, and then their expectations are lowered. And as a society, shouldn't we be aiming higher in terms of culture? What is our culture? What is our shared culture? What is our shared reality? And I would say that I think we need to have higher expectations for the United States, where, which is the most vast channels of any country in the world, and is a driver of global culture. I guess, in summary, do better.
I know, but Christy, why would you think, and I think about this all the time. Why do you think some of these platforms do not share data with us?
Well, I mean, I have a lot of good friends at the platforms, and I've been doing this for a while. I think I think this is a legacy media mentality. I think in some cases, the olden days of a New Year's Eve fight over cable carriage that has ruined the vacations of many a high-paid executive over the years, that, let's negotiate until both sides are bloody mentality has been extended to the free streaming space, because in some cases the people doing the negotiating came up in that environment. And so
Yep.
they themselves have Stockholm syndrome. This is how they learned it. This is how they do it. I think one of the benefits of the sports space right now, whether it's women's sports or other ascendant sports, is that we have a lot of people negotiating right now who didn't come up that way and didn't learn those rules of like, let's everyone lose a limb and have their children crying at the Thanksgiving table while we threaten to black out viewers' favorite teams. You know, like, why do we abuse our culture lovers like that? It's abusive. Let's not do that. Let's just be more reasonable. And I honestly think everyone would make more money, have more fun, and we'd have a better chance at a shared reality.
Pamela, I'll jump in. I'm gonna throw this out there. I'm an independent, so they can all stop talking to me tomorrow if they choose. But who would do that? Usually when people don't want to give up information is because they're afraid that the information isn't up to expectations of the audience. And I think for almost 10 years, as long as streaming's been around, there's been so much hype around programmatic. You can target, if you want to target an ad to left-handed rodeo clowns, as opposed to the mass audience, you can do that. But I think a lot of platforms, a lot of networks are concerned that those promises haven't quite panned out. And I'm not sure if it's the cause, the symptom, or the effect of what Christy already articulated, which is, we can tell how fast a pitch is going before it lands in a catcher's mitt. But we can't run a political debate and have a bullshit meter flash at the bottom of the screen when a candidate says something that's patently inaccurate or false. And usually when companies choose not to do that, it's because they're afraid of the after effect of that. I think we have an ability now. I'm no engineer. I think we know exactly who navigated from channel what to channel this, and how long they spent on each. So the fact that we're not sharing it is hurting the other, the dirty M word, which is monetization. How do we, we've got 14 minutes left on this subject. Christy, that's why I didn't start the whole discussion with that last question. I could have just disappeared after that. But when you think about how do we better monetize sports on streaming, we're bringing in a lot of sports, that never saw the light of day back when it was a 8-10 channel universe, let alone when it was 1,000 channel universe. Now there's infinite possibilities. Pamela, I'll start this one with you. Give Christy a chance to catch her breath or dampen or dry her forehead from that last discussion. How do we better monetize sports on streaming?
Oh, you know what?
Yeah.
If you guys only knew, like, one of the words that I die because sponsorships. And Christy nailed it earlier. We can't get sponsorships to help monetize at a higher level because we don't have the data to prove to these 20-some-year-old media buyers that putting money into a fast channel is going to give them an ROI that they can not get fired from, right? So, like, I don't know. When I was at DirecTV for 11 years, we had everything on Earth sponsored, and I was just so used to it being that way. And then crossing over into the fast world, nobody wants to sponsor anything. And we even, at one point, had the rights to CONMEBOL, which is the World Cup qualifying championships. We had in English and Spanish, right? So we did live shows around all of the games. We did it down in Miami. We had it going in English and Spanish simultaneously. It was so cool. The control rooms were, I could run between both control rooms because they were like right next to each other. So it was like, you're in the Spanish one and it's all fun and screaming. And then it was awesome. But we barely could get sponsors for that. And you pay a lot of money for those rights, you know?
Right.
So until we get the data and until people remember that direct deals are much better than programmatic, and I said it out loud, programmatic is one of the biggest problems. Like, you can't trust it because you don't get the data. And I feel like that's going to be making a bit of a change. I think direct is going to get a percentage higher and programmatic is going to take a step down, because you're seeing in the trades that people are having issues with the data that is coming out and kind of just not believing it all. I don't know how
Pam-
else feels about that, but
Right. So Pamela, just CONMEBOL is South America, and it includes Argentina, where Lionel Messi plays. So just for context.
yep. Oh yeah, I know.
But Mike, in radio we had Arbitron, and television they had Nielsen. Isn't there? You don't see a need to have something like a rating system like that in streaming? I mean,
Yeah, I think
I'm ready to quit lacrosse and create a rating system.
You should call
Get-
it non-Nielsen, and then you can figure out how to do all that, and you'll be in the money, because as everyone knows, you have to pay Nielsen a certain fee that's
Yeah,
pretty big, you guys, that is hard to.
subscribe to Arbitron. You have to
Yeah,
subscribe to
yeah.
Arbitron,
So if there was a different way, I mean, I think that'd be super, that's a smart business move.
yeah, I think to your point,
I'll be back, Mike. You trashed this
talking-
lacrosse.
Rob's dust shadow at this point. He's a Wile E. Coyote. Rob's shaped hole in his wall. Rob, as a producer, when you think about the opportunities to attach sponsors to Lacrosse Legends or other content that you create, how impactful do you think that is for you, both on social and on streaming platforms?
Well, it's very impactful on both. This sponsorship thing is a very big problem, because like Pamela was saying, these productions cost money. You know, everyone's like, yeah, it's great that you're doing it, but you could embed some sponsorships, like, well, I'll be interviewing a coach from a college, and I'll say, what would be your message to a student considering this university? And as they rattle that off, I'm showing, Zoom with drone shots, and that's their commercial without them even knowing they're creating a commercial. They created one. So I'm thinking of ingenious ways like that to create commercials, doing on-site locations. But without these numbers, you know, the amount of money you're asking for is a lot less, you know, and you could promote live events, but now you're like, okay, like I think it was Christy was saying before, if you don't have the right social media backing on these live events, they could be a disaster also. So you don't really want to take a chance on that. This spot, that's a tough one. It's a tough one, but
Christy, bringing it back to sponsorship, to your hands. I keep bringing you the softball questions, right?
I know. Can I drop another bomb? We have how many minutes? 9 minutes?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have time for a bomb.
Yeah, turn the spotlight around onto the programmers for a minute. And some of the programming that has gone on by some of the platform owners and also content library owners, I think there could be a higher bar set. So I think in the early days of streaming, it seemed like here's a cool idea. Let's do a channel that only shows Laverne and Shirley all day long. I love that show, much respect to it, but you know, I think we learned that maybe that's not a successful formula, and not to spotlight that particular content owner either. But I think that, again, going back to this idea that to some extent fast for certain companies is an afterthought in the programming space. The really, you know, highly paid programming executives they're not thinking about fast. They don't watch fast themselves, and in many cases they're actually not aware it exists. So And that is speaking from personal experience. So they're not aware it exists. And fast, let's admit, is also a very industry-centric term. It's totally inside baseball, but let's call it free streaming. Until we treat it on the programming side like a premium experience, whatever your definition of premium is, I think it can be a little bit chicken and egg. But going back to the idea that in some respect, certain channels are actually being programmed by the business development executives, not even by a content-oriented person who wouldn't want to be called a content-oriented person. They'd want to be called programming genius with golden gut. But to some extent, seeding the programming of channels to very smart business development executives, but who aren't grounded in serving an audience with interesting and engaging programming has led to sort of like, I wouldn't call it degradation. I'd just call it like sort of a mix of really amazing things in free streaming and then lazy, boring, let's just try to earn some incremental revenue from our library type programming. And nobody wants that.
Christy, I love that you brought it back to marketing 101. Who is the audience? And I think you hit the nail on the head. I feel like I could have mouthed everything you were saying in that last 3 minutes as you were saying it. I think the early days of FAST, there was a lot of Spotify type programming. You put it on the playlist, it spins out, it keeps your audience for a little while. But then as the category starts to mature, you have to follow what your audience is telling you. What tried and true practices of television viewership. And yeah, I think we have just about 5 minutes left. So I'm going to try to get everybody to get a shot. When you think about your audience, Christy served it up nicely as a final tea leaf to read. Tom, I'll start with you. When you think about the audience for Tata and for the partners that you have,
Right.
what's your message to the viewers of the content that flows through Tata?
So I'm actually going to talk about, there's actually a question in the chat about college, and college is one of my strong suits. The message to colleges, as everybody, maybe not everybody knows, name, image, likeness, paying players directly is going to have a huge impact on universities and their athletic departments when it comes to the numbers of sports that they do, the video departments that produce video, whatever. My message is you need to start thinking of yourself as a network. You need to start thinking of things that you would do to go out and find an audience, do sponsor integration and activation. I mean, I think the FAST channels really provide a great opportunity to do some activations that you can't do anywhere else. And basically, if you own content, you have video, it's the most underserved asset that you have. And that to me is where everybody's sort of, struggling. It's like, what is my content worth? It's worth a lot more than you're giving it credit for. And you've got to be really creative. You can be really creative in the way that you monetize it. But I don't think people are putting the thought and effort into that. And Robert, by the way, you should go to New Balance and have them sponsor every single thing that you do, period. Okay. Because they're, they own Warrior and they lacrosse, and that's a perfect sponsor partner for you. So
thank you, Tom. I'm on it.
you should be. I know where they are. They're in Boston.
Pamela, how do you serve the Fubo audience uniquely?
I think that we actually, based off of the uniques that we get per episode, they tell us what they like, and we switch it up for them, and our whole goal is to entertain them. You know, we have a great partner like Christy. We use we carry her channel on Fubo, the mothership, and we also share some content. So we know that they love this content, so we're going to serve it up to them.
Rob, how you reaching the lacrosse audience?
It's a tough one. Going to the games is really the best way. When they see the excitement and the enthusiasm, and they like you read in the comments, I didn't know it was like this, and it gets it's addicting. So when you show them the live games, that brings them in. The human interest stories always help, but the live games, and then you have a really popular player. Uh-oh, I think that's it. Mike?
Mike's lost. Oh my God.
Lost him.
I'm here.
Oh, thank God.
Okay. I'll let you wrap it up, Mike. I think I think they're pulling the hook out.
Christy, anything you want to add before I wrap up?
Yeah, I mean, I think anybody paying attention to this, if you're not familiar with what we call free ad-supported TV and free streaming, I think it's really spend more time consuming it, because I think the more people who engage with it and provide feedback and start to think about how we can make this an ever better experience for viewers, will help us improve the whole space. So yeah.
Yeah, I think, we all talked about programming and the need for coherent action-based programming. What's the old song? If you can't be with the one you love, honey, love the one you're with. We don't get all of the data that we'd like or that we need to make smart programming choices. Look at the data that we do get, and don't program these networks like streaming channels. Program them like people are watching these channels. Look at where you peak and look at where you fall off. Pamela mentioned Monday being underserved outside of Monday Night Football. Take advantage of data. Don't just look at what's performing on your channel. Look what you're competing against and counter program. So I really want to give a huge thanks to this panel. Amazing ideas, exchange of real information. And thanks to Streaming Media Connect, Steve and his team, for having us and allowing us to share wisdom and wit throughout the entire hour. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you,
Michael
everybody.
Gold.
Thanks to everyone who stuck around to the end of the day for this great discussion. Before we go, just want to congratulate once and hopefully future streaming media speaker John Hyder for winning the gift card and correctly identifying Steely Dan's Kid Charlemagne. John, you should be getting an email in a week or so letting you know how to claim your prize. And for anyone who wants to hear more sports talk, we'll be back at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, 7 a.m. Pacific Time tomorrow morning for Highlights First, Gen AI, Gen Z, and Next Gen sports streaming. So hope to see you all there. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.